So Christchurch, SailGP just over. I'm really happy because my main man, Phil Robertson, took the win. Such an entertaining sailor, and I find him quite relatable as a sailor. Has some moments of absolute brilliance and some moments of quite human mistakes. All of that was on display in the final at Christchurch. First big moment was down the first run, and you can see Canada goes for initial luff on Australia, but they can't go too far because they've got to give room at these 3 marks in the middle of the course, which are an obstruction. See a bear off, and Australia have really got a little bit of extra speed here, potentially getting a roll on, and equally at the same time Canada are under threat from New Zealand, who are on a lower line and pretty much certain to make the left hand turning mark at the bottom in 1, so precarious situation. Now Phil goes up, gives a little luff to the Australians. That in itself isn't particularly remarkable, we've all luffed someone before, but what is great is the course awareness that he luffs them just enough that they can no longer make the left mark in 1 jibe and have to do an extra jibe, whereas Canada are still able to soak down and make that in 1. So not only is it gain from the luff, but it's a double gain because he's forcing Australia into a jibe. Now, to top that off, the repercussion of Australia doing that extra jibe is they are jibing from port onto starboard. That then impacts New Zealand, who are on a straight lay into the left-hand mark, but because Australia jibe onto starboard, New Zealand now have to avoid Australia. Australia then effectively takes out New Zealand to the right-hand mark, allowing Canada to control that right-hand side of the beat as we look at wind. I mean, this is like next level Neo in the Matrix when he's become one type sailing. Beautiful work. If you know Phil, forward this video to him. I'd love to know if that was intentional, both the double hit on them. He'll probably say it was, but either way, it was beautiful to watch top level sailing. Another little interesting thing, this video is mostly about Canada, but on this beat something really interesting happens. Generally this event was well set up in that it was a marginal 3-tack beat, which gave you lots of overtaking opportunities if you could do it in 3 tacks rather than 4. But on this one, because Australia and New Zealand are fighting each other going high, they actually make it really far into this bank. And Tom takes the opportunity of a professional foul going out of bounds to go a little bit further up the ladder rungs to open up the opportunity of just a 2-tack beat. So Australia won 1 penalty already and they're significantly behind, but because they're going to hit the boundary further up the ladder rungs, it opens up that starboard ley line for Australia. See New Zealand bounce off at rod and gun there, a bit lower down, whereas Australia managed to hold height right the way up to Heineken or kind of halfway into Alvarium. In fact, they actually take another penalty here, another infringement, but crucially, they've made this beat in just 2 tacks. A nice example of how the strategy plays out in SailGP around playing the shifts, playing the modes to limit your tacks, and sometimes game the system a little bit in terms of professional fouls. Certainly a bit of that going on with Australia on that beat. But going back to our man Phil Robertson, at this moment he's probably approaching a 300-metre lead on Team New Zealand. Yet Phil finds a way to make this race interesting again for us. So halfway down this run, stuffs a dodgy jive in, presumably for the benefit of the spectators. New Zealand close up right on Canada, but in typical Phil fashion, not happy with 1 mistake in the final, he's going to throw in another for us. We've already talked about the bottom left of this course and the obstruction. New Zealand instantly recognise that they're not making it quite as far up that left-hand shore. They flip into attack pretty quickly to go below the obstruction, come out on this angle, but Canada, in the second big mistake in 30 seconds time, go into this boundary but not quite far enough, so they don't take the piss like Tom Singsby and go into the right up here. Now this course geometry and the obstruction in the middle cut a lot of sailors out. It was effectively why Emirates GBR missed the final, because they got their ley lines wrong coming out from the bottom left of this course, had to do a big duck on that obstruction, so you have to go into a high mode and go really slow, whereas New Zealand have got the bow down approaching 60k. That basically lets New Zealand fully back into the race. It's now neck and neck between the two teams. Coming up to the top of the course, and they're a little bit lifted on this jibe. New Zealand do the textbook manoeuvre jibe onto the headed jibe, so they're heading further down the course. But Phil, ready to rescue an event win, plays a blinder, going for the jibe. They actually go out of bounds on this jibe, so you could potentially see it as a professional foul. And what really stretching the boundary there does for Canada, I mean, they lose a bit in the jibe anyway, so their penalty's instantly wound off, but with a good gust, they're now laying down to the leeward mark in one jibe. And that's critical, as we see later, New Zealand, who have actually gained the lead, but have 2 extra manoeuvres to get into that finish leg. And by the time they've done one jibe, they're now behind. Canada's got a good gust and is just able to soak down into the right-hand turn to the finish. New Zealand still an extra jibe to make, and yeah, win goes to Phil Robertson. 2 moments of absolute brilliance and 2 moments of absolute disaster with the dodgy jibe and the terrible ley line into that obstruction. Super good racing. Stoked for the Canadians take a win. Most kind of impartial viewers' favourite team is surely the Canadians for the entertainment. So yeah, that's a little story about SailGP. If you do want to see a few more SailGP videos, then let me know. Going to be a busy week this actually, so looking at AC stuff, we've got Tiwa Hutai launching, new foil on American Magic, lots going on, so keep your eyes peeled for other videos dropping this week. Take care, and I'll see you around.